We're going to talk a little bit about coordination of certain experiences and projects. And we're going to also talk a little bit about communication and recognition for when you do your partnership or when you do your service experiences. I'm going to give you a couple examples of how to market or promote those experiences. And then we'll have a little bit of group time to talk a little about your best practices for partnerships. So first I want to talk a little bit about the scope, the landscape of civic engagement in West Michigan and collaboration. The first thing that I just want you to know is just some basic data. How many higher ed institutions in West Michigan? How many students today enrolled in a college in West Michigan? How many roughly nonprofit organizations are in Kent County? Any guess to higher ed institutions? Number of higher ed institutions in West Michigan. Give a guess. 10. I hear 10. Now when you think higher ed institutions, I want you to think 2-year. I want you to think 4-year. I want you to think satellite campuses. I want you to think online institutions. There are over 20 higher ed institutions in West Michigan, and over 100,000 students today enrolled in a class. If you think about all the experiential learning, think about internships, think about students going into the community, think about as part of their graduation requirement if they had to do an internship, think about all the business schools in each of those institutions that might require a student to do a 150-hour a semester internship, and then they got to develop those partnerships. How many nonprofit organizations in Kent County? Thousands. That's good. Broad. Captures a lot. Over 2,000 nonprofit organizations just in Kent County. Just think about that. Over 2,000. I can only imagine a lot of those nonprofit organizations are competing for resources, volunteers, grant funding, obviously donors. Sometimes they're competing against, or they might be sharing similar programs or similar systems that they might be competing against each other. But then just imagine those 100,000 students, and I'm not going to say 100,000 students at one time are going to do an internship, they're going to volunteer, they're going to do work study. But they're knocking on those 2,000 nonprofit organizations and asking, how can I help you? And sometimes logistically, that doesn't happen perfectly, right? Because if you're a nonprofit organization, if you're a volunteer manager, most of the phone calls that you get are from a student saying, I need to do 10 hours of volunteer service. What could you do? And I have not looked at your website, and I don't know. Do I do a background check? Right?
And I got to do it yesterday.
And I needed this. Yeah, my instructor wants me to do the instructor. And then that's where the whole concept of screening that student. So you begin to ask questions, like you learned a little bit this morning about the spectrum of experiential learning. So when that student calls you, you could say, whatever you want to say, but you can, relate it to, well, obviously I don't think we're going to be able to meet your needs today. This is our kind of system of how we can incorporate you to our nonprofit, or I can point you to the Volunteer Solutions website managed by Jane Royer, which you'll learn a little bit more today. There might be a background process. We can't turn around all that, but you want to ask, like, is this for a class? Are you going to get credit for this? Or is this volunteer? Is this on your own time? What's your flexibility? Oh, no, I got well, our volunteer opportunity, we only do volunteers on Saturday. We have this event that's coming up on Saturday. Oh, but I got to work on Saturday, or, and I got school during the week. So these are all of the things that you're probably having to interact with each time a student may call. They may call the program coordinator. They may call the volunteer coordinator. Sometimes the volunteer coordinator is the program coordinator. So they're managing all of that engagement, and you don't necessarily want to turn away a student volunteer. because they might be volunteering today, and depending on how you engage with them, or they may not choose to volunteer today, but if they want to volunteer in the future, if you do not have a positive interaction with them, you're turning away a potential volunteer, you're a potential donor. So you got to think, on both ends, how you're going to engage with that student. There's a lot of excellent organizations in West Michigan. Some of them are known nationally. There's another organization that provides some good information on collaboration. The first one I want to talk about is the Johnson Center at GVSU. Do we have someone here from the Johnson Center? I know maybe not necessarily. Yes, here we go. Excellent, excellent organizations. How many of you are familiar with the Johnson Center? Great. So the Johnson Center provides a lot of resources for nonprofit organizations. So they'll share a nonprofit guide to show certain best practices and workshops, and I'm going to pull that up just real quick. But if you're interested in building capacity for your nonprofit organizations, if you're learning about best practices for supporting philanthropy or civic engagement, I would direct you to the Johnson Center. They have tons and tons of resources, research materials, how-tos. I mean, here there's workshops on helping to acquire board members. They do board member trainings. There's another link here for college students, helping college students to engage in the community. So I would obviously point you to the Johnson Center. Anything and everything you want to know about nonprofit organizations and best practices, I'm pointing you to the Johnson Center. The next one is the West Michigan Strategic Alliance. How many are you familiar with that? Again, another excellent organization. They too pool a lot of data around the quality of life, and I'm going to pull that up so you can see. They call it the regional indicators or vital signs. If I can get my mouse to work. Here it is. So if you want to know a little bit about categories of the quality of life, such as acquisition of high school diploma or the rate of poverty in certain areas of West Michigan, I would encourage you to look at their website here. And every year they have an annual report that they highlight either the negative impacts on each of those vital signs or the positive impacts. What are the changes from year to year? What is the quality of life? What's the standard of living in West Michigan based on those indicators? They also have a new initiative, an internship initiative. They're trying to work with higher institutions, the corporate sector, and making a hub, one place where if you're a business or you're a corporate entity that you have a need for an intern, you have a potential job description prepared, you go to this website, this initiative, and they will facilitate that for you. So versus going to GRCC, and then you got to go to this department, and you got to talk to this person for this particular internship. And then if you have a completely different internship, you got to talk to this department and this faculty and this staff person. They're making it very user-friendly for you right now, and I'm going to pull up this website here. There's this concept of brain drain. Anybody familiar with that? So students that have a college experience, hopefully they've succeeded and have graduated. Obviously right now it's challenging times, right? The economy, finding a job. So college students that are just graduating, they're competing against everybody else in the same pool. And so what we're trying to do is engage them right here, find a connection with them through an internship, through volunteering. Let's keep them here. And this initiative supports not necessarily the brain drain, but sustaining students here in our community. Oftentimes, if there's not a job or if West Michigan isn't their lifestyle, then they'll go to the big cities like Chicago, and they don't know that they have everything that they need right here in West Michigan.
When deciding whether or not
So an excellent resource for you. You know, it kind of centralizes internships for you if you're interested in internships. Obviously, if you're more comfortable in working with the individual institution, I mean, you'll have to try to navigate through some of those systems, but this tends to make it a little bit easier. The last resource that I want to point your direction to is what they call the Foundation Center. And again, it's a hub of collecting data for best practices and collaborations. And they will post everything that you need to know as far as what are those collaborations, what's involved, who's collaborating on it, what are the outcomes, what were the successes, what were the failures. Anything you want to know, they have examples for you on their website. Again, it's called the Foundation Center. So they have a search option here, but you can see all the categories that you could search by. And the map on the top right there, that's, you know, talking about the density of the collaboration, of only those collaborations that have been submitted. So I don't want you to get a feeling that, you know, Texas isn't very collaborative because they're not very well dense. The orange bubble isn't very big. But it's only those that are actually participating in this database search. So you can search by franchise or license. You could search by marketing efforts. They share everything that they've done in their collaboration to make it successful. Any questions on that? Yes?
Is that all nonprofits, or are there some businesses involved in those collaborations?
Yes, as I've looked through there are, you know, corporate folks that are partnering with higher institutions. There are higher institutions that are partnering with nonprofits. And there are examples of nonprofits partnering with corporations. And then there are some examples with everyone kind of collaborating together. That's a good question. Good. So why partnership? What's so fancy about partnership? Why would we want to consider partnership? From my perspective, you would want to partner to increase capacity. I know from the nonprofit perspective, you know, all of us have had to kind of cut back and ask to do more, but especially more so with the nonprofit arena. And so when considering partnership, especially with GRCC, we are intently, purposefully partnering with you to build your capacity, to identify your needs, to, in a meaningful way, understand what those needs are, and then again, align those needs with the best program within our office. So when we talk about those phone calls that you get from students, and I'm not going to say if you partner with GRCC that you won't get any of those phone calls, but we're trying to reduce the quantity of those phone calls. We want all of the coordination, the communication to be filtered through the center. So we would be the hub for your campus, okay? If you pool your resources and working together in an efficient and coordinated manner, obviously you're going to hopefully be able to build capacity. And I think one of the most important things that we've learned in the last couple of years is obviously when you build your partnerships, you're sharing unique outcomes. So if you have a unique need and that we're able to partner with one of our programs, and you can even, you know, package this in a partnership or relationship with another higher institutions, but you want to be meaningful about it. You want to have these conversations so that you're not feeling as a nonprofit a lab. You know, you don't want necessarily students coming in and, you know, observing and then they're in and they're out. You know, we're constantly developing the relationship, honing the relationship, so it's going to better improve your organization and your resources, building capacity as much as it is as we're going to have a quality service experience for each student, okay? By partnership, you'll have an increase in understanding. There's going to be an added level of respect between the nonprofit organization and the hired institutions. There will also be a better understanding of resources available. We are a member of Michigan Campus Compact, which is a great organization. They provide a lot of resources and support, one of them being grants, to support higher institutions doing civic engagement. And so they have random grants from $5,000 all the way up to $50,000. And so what we like to do with our partnerships is make them aware of those opportunities, those additional resources, those grants that we might be able to partner with to further your mission or to further your programs and services. We have space here at the college. I mean, if you wanted to host a meeting, if you wanted to host a conference, such as today, we have the space available for our partners to use. We have computer labs potentially available for our community partners to use. We potentially have parking available. And in some cases, even transportation. I know Dr. Mindy Furlan, through our panel discussions, she's going to talk about a unique experience and partnership that we had with eQuest Therapeutic Writing Center, and we partnered with Dean Transportation. And so through that partnership, we were able to collaborate together to meet eQuest's needs. And the last reason, possibly, there's many, is to increase quality of outcomes and experience. Again, if you have improved communication, you have those pathways. I know that you are aware, because we're going to meet, and I'll facilitate that just in a couple more slides, our partnership process. But you'll have a face to the name. You'll know that when a GRCC student comes to your organization, they're connected to Mike Schavey. They're connected to the Academic Service Learning Center. And you have a partnership with them. And from the partnership, as a community partner, you'll have an orientation, you'll be a training, so you'll understand exactly what are our programs and what are our systems and processes, what's the paperwork, what's the bureaucracy, hopefully minimal. But that's what we try to facilitate through our community partner. Any questions on that? Working with higher education institutions, pros and cons. There's obviously huge rewards into doing that, but not everyone is obviously a student volunteer. I know we've had some conversations in the past that, and students' feedback that they always felt that they were a volunteer. And you know, even if they were an intern or if they are a work study student, and I think sometimes there's a disconnect between them actually feeling like they're a volunteer or being processed similarly like a volunteer. Because I know on your end, if you're a nonprofit organization, there is a process. You know, if you're going to volunteer, you got to interview with someone, you might have to do a background check. And so for them, or at least on your end, that's a volunteer pathway. That's your system of bringing in new folks into your organization and acclimating them. And so the student may not necessarily understand that, and so they might feel like then they are a volunteer, or that at times maybe there's not enough supervision. So once they get into their placement, they don't feel like they know what they're doing, and then they get paired up with a volunteer, and then those roles get blended. So just to know that there is that concept from student, that there's this notion that they always feel like they're a volunteer. Each institution, as you are aware, has unique programs and their own processes and systems. You know, you heard Grand Valley, you heard Aquinas and Calvin. They each have their kind of systems and their process of how they facilitate students into the community through their programs. And sometimes they're not always all centrally located. You might have the internship program in career resources or career services, but you have the volunteer center. But then you might have the Academic Service Learning Center, and they're doing curriculum service learning. And so you just have to be aware that sometimes if you want a student volunteer, but you really mean internship, or you say you want to volunteer, then they transfer you to the internship area, and they don't transfer you over to the volunteer center, you're going to probably have to go through some of those until you find the right person, and then you make your connection that way. And again, each program may have a unique contact person and their own unique process. I know specifically for our community partners, we try to work with them over the summer to then plan out the entire year. So what we'll do initially is obviously assess how did the first year go and make the tweaks as we need to, and there's an evaluation process. And then what we'll do is begin planning out what are your needs and how do they best align with our programs. And so we'll be collecting like a job description if it's a community service work study student, and we might be collecting a service experience if it's working with an instructor or a faculty. And then that's going to be a little bit tricky if you're going to be working with faculty, and I'll explain that. When working with faculty, things have to be very well planned out in advance, at least a semester in advance. So if you have a need, it may not necessarily get met until that fall or winter semester, but it should be planned out at least a semester in advance, because ideally they have to tweak their syllabus. They have to figure out how many students can I actually try to facilitate to do academic service learning. Am I going to do service learning with 3 different groups, or am I going to have each individual student just go out into the community and find their placements? So those logistics and coordination pieces all have to come into play in making sure that your students and your students will then have a quality service experience. Sometimes service learning is required, sometimes it's optional. So students may not know that they're doing service learning in their class until day 1, when they flip up the syllabus and then they find out, I got to do 20 hours of service learning this semester, and then the instructor may elect or choose then, well, it's going to be optional, so you may choose not to do it, and you could do this research paper, or you could choose to do it and have a great experience working with one of our community partners. Sometimes the service is part of the grade. And some may work independently of the service learning centers themselves. And that's kind of key. Anytime you have an instructor that calls you from one of the institutions, sometimes that center may already have a process for faculty to follow through on prior to then contacting a community partner. And obviously you may not necessarily know that, but I'm telling you now, service learning centers do have a process for helping support instructors integrate service into the curriculum, because it has to be done right. It's not just something you want to try to wing throughout the semester, because you're going to possibly have a negative service experience with the student and then with the community, and that looks bad with everybody. So just so you know, some faculty may not necessarily work through the center. So if you get contacted by any one of our instructors, make sure you ask them if they've been working with the Academic Service Learning Center, and feel free to contact one of us and we can follow up with them. The ultimate end game, right, for higher education, well, for the community, it's brain drain, right? And there's a bigger picture to that, but there's brain drain. For higher institutions, we're always talking about student retention. We're talking about student success. Once a student is here, we want to keep them here. We want to keep them coming back. And then their end game, right, is either to get a certificate, possibly if they're at GRCC, they're possibly going to transfer, or they're possibly going to graduate. So our end game is always going to be talking about retention and student success. And we know there's tons of research out there that supports civic engagement. Those students that do civic engagement are going to do a lot better in school. There's going to be an increase in students' understanding of the nonprofit sector. What are the needs? I mean, they're going to learn about it and through textbooks and lectures, but it's another thing to actually experience it. Get your hands dirty when we talk about homelessness. Let's take a walk 2 blocks down the street where we have a large community of our homeless population and the resources or those organizations that provide support to that population. They're going to understand systems. What are the systems that impact those that are feeling like they're homeless? How do you get access to health care? What's the quality of health care? How do you find affordable housing? What if you have children? What if you're married? What are all those systems that navigate those issues? They're obviously going to hopefully learn that there is an appropriate way to engage with the community. There is a process for that. And there's a process for taking what you're trying to learn in your curriculum and applying it to your learning in that class, but also applying it to who you are as a person. What are your values? What are your beliefs? Because you're going to get tested. What are your stereotypes? Because when you go and have that experience, hopefully you're thinking about that. There's going to be an increase in the awareness of community needs, obviously, and hopefully by students participating, the end goal is them to be a participatory citizen. So let's just not serve where you're in college. We're going to ask you to serve and be this a part of your lifestyle, part of your value system of serving your community once you graduate or when you're done with your college experience. And we're hoping that'll get reflected back in the quality of life here in West Michigan, which will then hopefully support the data that's in the vital signs. So at GRCC, I'm going to talk just a little bit about our process of partnership. Like I said, we have 4 full-time staff. Initially, what we'll do is the director, Dr. Mindy Furlan, and I will either get a request from a faculty member or perhaps the nonprofit organization will contact us, and they're interested in being a partner, and so we'll follow with them. We'll meet with them at their facility. So when we do that, we want to see, all right, A, who you are, B, where you work, what's going to be in the environment of those students. We're going to do like a risk and liability assessment, visual assessment as we're scanning. They're obviously going to be explaining their mission, their purpose, their values, their programs. Then they're going to be expressing their needs as far as how can they utilize volunteers, how have they utilized volunteers, and then maybe how could we tweak that to either be a work-study position, maybe it's going to be an event, maybe it's going to be an internship, maybe it's going to be connected to a course. And then all those logistics kind of get planned out through that meeting. And again, we'll share kind of our approach to what our programs and our mission and our purpose is. It's very intentful because we want to make sure that we provide the best pathway for each student and working with faculty so that they're going to have a quality experience working in that organization and that they will continue to have a quality experience. We have a partnership agreement, and I'm going to quickly pull that up. So that's kind of like the formal piece of our partnership paperwork. There's going to be a conversation in there about expectations. There's going to be a conversation in this document about risk and liability. We're trying to protect you, we're trying to protect us, we're trying to protect the student. Now again, each institution, they may have an agreement, they may describe partnership in a different way, but this is how we're describing partnership in our process. This is the whole 3-year commitment that I was talking about. Yeah, this is 4 pages. So the first page obviously just kind of describes the partnership, who the partner is. This is the expectations of each student from GRCC, the faculty, and from the community partner, the supervisor, or the designee at that site. When we have an agreement with a community partner, they're not just partnering just to facilitate students. They're going to be asked to participate on an advisory council, and it may not necessarily be that person, that volunteer coordinator. It could be any representative from your organization. But we're going to ask them to participate on our advisory council. Our advisory council is made up of faculty, students, administrators, and our community partners. They're also going to have an opportunity to participate in a professional development experience. There's an annual conference called the Institute, Service Learning and Civic Engagement. We'll ask them to attend that, and then they can better understand best practices of service and service learning. Here's some lovely legalese for everyone when we talk about terms of the agreement. So again, typically the executive, bless you, the executive director from the organization will sign this document. We'll have our director, Mindy Ferlin, will sign this, and then our dean that oversees our area will sign this. Again, this is just an added level of protection for everyone when we're talking about risk and liability in terms of agreement. Okay. We, at times, have used a form to kind of capture the needs and this whole conversation about how we're going to connect you to our programs. We call it the impact plan. I'm going to quickly pull that up. So when we meet with our community partners annually, we're going to use or try to capture all this information on a document. And I think it's the 4th page in your packet. So as you see here, the community partners, Arbor Circle. The curriculum service learning experience is the specific classes PY 232, developmental psychology. This is an older one, so this is fall 2007. They're going to be doing academic service learning. So that's marked there. They would have had the option of meeting this need by a work study student, possibly a AmeriCorps, or an event like the Day of Service. So is this experience going to be a placement, or is this going to be a project? Is this going to be a project where you might have a group of students try to develop a marketing plan or a website, or is this going to be potentially a placement where you might plug in someone for maybe a typical volunteer experience? In this case, it's going to be a placement. The title of this experience is Homeless Youth Services Mentor. So a student or students, multiple students from this placement, from this class, they're going to be a mentor in the Homeless Youth Services program. And so when working with Arbor Circle, that's Janelle, she's identified that they can accommodate 15 to 20 students for a given semester. Now, semester's 15 weeks, but I want to let you know that it's going to get cut down to 10, because you're going to have a couple of weeks in the beginning of the semester where students are getting acclimated to the curriculum, to actually what service learning is. They might do some research on the nonprofit and the whole need. And at the end of the semester, obviously, there's final exams and trying to wrap up all their service experience. We don't want to encourage students waiting, obviously, to the last second to get their service learning hours in. And below that is the identified community partner needs. She said she needs to increase the number of mentors, whether it be 1 or 20. A mentor will help us increase our capacity to meet youth needs. And again, at that time, we were aligning needs with neighborhood indicators. So we were working with neighborhood associations, trying to identify specifically in that neighborhood cluster what was the specific need. In this case, it was decreasing crimes by juveniles. So obviously, that's very connected to mentorship. The agreed upon responsibilities of each mentor from this class would be to attend the required training, and so on and so on. We have a training. What is the training provided? Is there going to be an orientation for each mentor? Again, facilitating background checks. So what are the potential outcomes? So they're going to do all this, but what's going to happen at the end? So potentially they're going to complete an asset checklist with each mentee. So when they get assigned their mentor and their mentee, they're going to do this asset checklist, each mentee. They're going to try to recruit one mentor. They're going to complete 20 hours of the mentoring. 50% of the GRCC mentors will continue beyond their 20 hours, et cetera. You can look through those. The middle part talks about our general learner outcomes. And these are outcomes that each course tries to align to. So at the end of the day, each class at GRCC is hopefully going to either directly impact one of these outcomes. Either you're going to increase your technology skills, you're going to increase your communication skills. You're going to try to, and in this experience, they're focusing on communication, critical thinking, and so on. On our end, we do pre and post tests for each student. So each student will then be asked a survey at the beginning of the semester. What are your attitudes, thoughts, beliefs around being engaged in the community? And then at the end, we'll ask the same questions to see if there's a difference in your perceptions from the beginning of your experience to the end of the experience. There's a midterm reflection. When you do service learning, one of the critical pieces, as Wayne talked about this morning, is reflection. So that's that whole thinking as far as what is the connection from what you're trying to learn to the actual need, and how has that possibly shaped your values or the person that you are. There's an end of the semester evaluation, and there's some additional anecdotes. 9 out of the 32 students in that class participated in this experience. A total of 126 hours were accumulated just in that experience alone. There's some GPA stuff that isn't necessarily always correlated to service, but I mean, it could be an indicator. And the second page, I think, is just a blank experience, so if you wanted to use that for yourself, you can. How am I doing on time? Doing good? Well, there's one thing that I want to just quickly show you, and then I'll have your group conversations after that. But the last document that you have in your pocket is a partnership rubric. And here what we do is, and this gets tweaked every year, but how do we then assess our partnership? And we're assessing our partnerships based on responsiveness. There are certain deadlines that we have to meet at the college to facilitate our paperwork, and there is a score. We have a scoring element to the responsiveness. So there might be emails, there might be evaluations that community partners might have to complete, and we'll score that appropriately. There's a participation rubric. So how involved was a community partner when we've asked you to possibly attend our community advisory committee or an open house? Did you actually attend? Then there's a paperwork as far as actually completing the necessary paperwork of the partnership. And then we have some just anecdotal information here from student evaluations and any comments. And actually, was the evaluation completed? And then at the top, it gives an overall score. So, and then we'll take those results, and then again we'll share that with our community partners. So this is just something that you could use if you're developing your partnerships when you're talking about outcomes and you're talking about working with a service learning center. Any questions so far? Well, now I just want to briefly talk about communication and marketing of your partnership once it's up and running. You can do that for a variety of ways. There's newsletters. GRCC, we have a semester newsletter. There's external on your end. There could be information provided as far as the announcement of the partnership, or maybe some of the work that the students are doing at your organization and marketing that in your own newsletter. I know the eQuest did a spot when we did Make a Difference Day, when we had 200 students in October go to eQuest Center. They wrote that up in one of their newsletters. We also have internal communication. We call it GRCC Today. It's kind of, well, it's in a blog format. We also have a GRCC magazine, GRCC TV. We also have our own YouTube. So anything that we do with our partnership, it's going to get filtered through GRCC, all the media marketing outlets that we have. So here, there's a little video here made up through our media services on our community cleanup day. And so this was actually posted so all employees and staff could actually see what our students are doing in the community, and our media service did a great job in providing a video for that. There's obviously Facebook. Anybody not have Facebook? Who's brave? Okay, holdouts, all right. We do have a Facebook site, and we use that in a purposeful way. I know some people kind of blast things out every single day. We don't. It's very unique to the actual timeline of the service experience. So if you become a fan of us, you won't be getting updates every day from us. There are other ways that a partnership can be marketed. Michigan Campus Compact, again, is the organization I talked about. They have a magazine. They also facilitate the Carter Partnership Award, which is an opportunity for your partnership or your collaboration to be involved in a competition where you could win $10,000 towards your partnership. But they also have a magazine, and they highlight all the service experiences within Michigan. There's also press releases. GRCC does formal press releases for all of our events. Eventually. Maybe not. It'll come up later. So what I like to do now, since we have 5 minutes left, is if you can have a quick conversation within your table, at each table, about your best practices of partnership. So from your perspective, what has worked well, and then what are some of those challenges that you have? And or maybe what are some ways that you would like to partner with higher institutions? We got a quick question?
Just curious as to maybe how many participants are in here today that already have a relationship with GRCC?
Are any of our community partners? So we got some.
That might help some conversation.
Yep. And so you can obviously ask anybody from GRC about how we partner in that experience too. So this is the press release actually for today that our communications team sent. So good. Why don't we just take the next 5 minutes and have your conversations?